numbers up here for you.
I know you're very excited to see me.
Well, my mom calls, don't answer.
Turn that off until Matt gets done.
That's smart. That's smart. Well, thank you guys for coming. This is obviously a very special day for the Mountaineer basketball program and West Virginia University athletics history, so we appreciate you coming out. Here today to honor one of the all-time greats in the game of basketball, a guy who's made a tremendous impact on the game. He's a member of the WVU Sports Hall of Fame. He's a member of the Mountaineer Legends Society, member of the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, so a career full of accomplishments. And today will become the third Mountaineer basketball player to have his number retired and hang in the rafters of the Coliseum. So with that, we'll bring up Mr. Rod Thorn.
Thank you, Matt. Just would like to say that I'm tremendously humbled by this. It's a great day for the Thorn family, and looking forward to not only the halftime, but also to a Mountaineer victory today. And it's just, you know, you think back to when you matriculated here many years ago. You never anticipate or never even think about a day like this happening, but it has, and just very appreciative and very thankful. Questions?
So Rod, what does it mean to you personally?
It's, you know, I've been fortunate to have a lot of honors over the course of my adult life, and this is right there. You know, to be honored by your school, to be honored, you know, in the state that you grew up, is a tremendous thing. And I am, you know, as I said, very appreciative of this.
Ron, I'm sure there's a lot of memories, nostalgia about your time here coming back this week, but I'm wondering, are there any games or moments from your playing career here that stick out when you think back?
No, I was thinking about that on the way up here. My wife and I came up from Florida, where we live now, and I was thinking just about that. And there are certain games. My junior year, my sophomore year, we lost in the Southern Conference tournament in the semifinal game, and West Virginia had not lost in that tournament for a long time. So we ended up winning my junior year, and we beat, I want to say, Virginia Tech in the finals. And I remember that game because it was, we got to win this game. It was one of those type things. Games tend to run together, you know, when you think back on them. What I really remember here are people, the fans who were fantastic. The coaches, the players I played with, the trainers, the the people you dealt with on a day in and day out basis. I tend to think more about that than any specific games. You're gonna have really good games not so good. We had good teams when I was here, and but it was the people.
Rod, I'm curious, you were part of a run of really good West Virginia players at that time. Not just that came to West Virginia, but went to other places. I think of Howard Hurt, Duke, Chris Smith. I think half of Virginia Tech's team was West Virginia guys. Why was West Virginia so good back then, in your opinion, with basketball?
That's I always tell Chris Smith, had he come to West Virginia, they probably would have won 2 national championships. He was a terrific player.
Right.
Dean Blake and Chris Smith.
Right.
Both went to Virginia
right.
Tech. I don't. That's a good question. Hundley was a senior when Wes was a freshman.
Right.
Wes was a senior when I was a freshman, and then the year after I left, Fritz Williams, came along. So there was some
great run.
There were some really good players at that time. And as you said, some others that went to other schools.
Hal Greer, Marshall.
Hal Greer, one of the
Yeah.
great players of all time. Fantastic player.
Right.
I don't know.
Special time, of course.
It, West basketball's been huge in West Virginia for many, many years, but there was some, certainly led by West. There were some pretty good players during that time.
Besides the talent, you played for 4 years in the backcourt with a fellow named Jim McCormick
Yeah.
in Martinsville. What reflection, of course, Jim's not with us any longer, what reflections do you have on Jim McCormick? He was your backcourt running mate for 4 straight years.
Well, he was a terrific player, number one. He ended up being drafted in the 3rd round by Cincinnati. Had he been drafted by another team, Cincinnati, had 4 or 5 guards at that time. I think he definitely would have been a pro player. It was great playing with him. He could handle the ball, he could shoot the ball. Just a terrific player and a great guy. Enjoyed playing with him.
Besides the talent you had on those teams?
I'm sorry?
I said, besides the talent that you had on the teams here, what made the field house such a tough place to play?
Well, number one, the configuration. When you were taking the ball out of bounds, you were in the crowd, except on the ends, where players sat. And it was very intimidating. I don't recall exactly how many fans it's the old place seated, but it was an incredible home court advantage. It really was. West Virginia over a 15, 20-year period lost very few games here, and it was impossible not to get up. If you were having an off game and the crowd wouldn't let you, stay having an off game, it just inspired you. That's another thing I remember, is how great those crowds were. And when you ran on the court and they rolled the rug out, it was very inspiring.
Rod, sort of going along the lines of what John was saying about the lineage of players back in the state at that time, Rod often said later in his years that if he had the chance to play with Jerry, at least for 1 year, that they would have won a national championship. If you would have had a chance to play with Jerry, your freshman year, how do you think that would have gone?
I often wondered about that. We had a really good freshman team, and we practiced against the varsity a lot in preseason. At that time, it would have been great. They went to Jerry's junior year. I think they went to the final game and ended up losing, and then they got upset the next year. But it would have been great. It really would have been. Who knows what we would have done, but it would have been great.
It just seems weird that you guys were all 4 years.
It does.
Could one of you have been born a year earlier or sooner?
Yeah, it does seem weird, doesn't it?
Any words about Coach Schaus?
Well, I was recruited by Coach Schaus, and he was an imposing figure, little buff, but a very imposing figure. And he left when Jerry left, so I didn't get to play for him. I played for Coach King, who was a very good coach. But Coach Schaus demanded respect. He was a big guy to start out with, and you didn't fool around with him. He was a great one.
I don't know if you are aware, you may be aware of this, but Fred Schaus told me once that he almost had John Havlicek, which would have been right in that time period with you. Were you aware of that? Did you know that he was that close to getting John Havlicek,
You know-
who played for Bobby Carroll, who was Fred's teammate in high
Yeah.
school or college?
You know, I did not know that, but I
Yeah.
wish he had gotten it. You know, we played in the LA Classic, I think was the name of it, when Havlicek played with Jerry Lucas and those guys. We didn't play them,
Right.
but we played there. Havlicek was one of the great players ever in pro ball. And I can recall guarding him, and the guy never stopped. He ran you off screen after screen after screen, but he never stopped. It was, you know, like if you tried to cover him for about 6 minutes, you were exhausted. He never stopped. He had an incredible motor, and had he come here, that would have been pretty good.
I was going to say, you guys pressed and ran. That would have fit perfectly.
Oh,
with the
he
way you
would have.
played.
It would have fit perfectly with him, and no, he would have fit right
Right.
in. He would have been great.
I recall once that you guys ran on just about everything, whether it was an inbounds play,
Yeah.
everything. Well, describe that style. I've heard it once. It's kind of motion offense before motion offense. Is that?
And that's exactly what it was. It was a motion offense before motion. You know, you passed and cut away, set a screen. But the ball, you depended on ball movement, and you depended on people moving. You know, you couldn't stand around, and it was great. You know, because there were a lot of shots in games. You know, players loved it. You know, we were getting up shots about every 20 seconds.
And your team scored.
In those
Yeah.
days, yeah, we scored a lot. And yeah, but you're right. He didn't call it a motion offense, but that's what it really was.
Yeah.
It was what you call a modern day motion offense.
That's why they
It was
put,
great.
that's why they put the 24-second shot clock in to slow you guys down.
That would have slowed us down, that's for sure.
I got to ask you about your best game. I think you scored 44 in a consolation game.
No, it wasn't a consolation.
Well, NCAA tournament.
We lost that game to go into a consolation.
Okay. Well, it wasn't the game that you had the career high when George held the ball. There was a stall, and you could have had.
Well,
maybe 50.
no, that was the consolation game.
Okay.
No, the first game we played St. Joe,
Okay.
and I was pretty hot that game, so scored a lot of points, but we ended up losing a game we probably should have won. And then the second game, we played NYU that had Happy Hairston and
Right.
Barry Kramer, who were very good players. And with about 10 minutes left in the game, we were up 10 or 12 points, and we went into a stall. And it was like, you know, the players were saying, like, what are we doing? This game is a consolation game. But we went into a stall.
Right.
I would have probably had another 45 or 50 in that game.
Well, what goes to the mind of a 17, 18-year-old kid, I'm guessing, which is what you were at the time, when the legislature declares you a natural resource? You know, you're a young kid at that time, and that happens, and, you know, it never happened before. I'm just kind of wondering what that moment was like for you at that time.
You know, I was so young and naive at 16, 17, 18 years old that I didn't really think a lot about it. You know, it was like, what? To me, but I know my mother was you know, talked about it, and she was a big proponent of me going to West Virginia, and she liked it. But I didn't really think about it, to tell you the truth.
You were also thinking about Duke? I mean, did that...
That my final choice was West Virginia or Duke, and Howard Hurt
Right.
was at Duke at the time, and what I remember is they came to visit me, and they bought a doctor. I was in pre-med when I, you know, initially matriculated here, and they bought a doctor named DeBakey to visit, who was a famous heart surgeon at the time, which impressed me.
Did Dick Grote have anything to do with your thinking at that time?
Well, he was a tremendous player,
And baseball.
both basketball and baseball, but he didn't have any influence, you know, I mean, one way or the other. But he was a great player.
What'd your dad mean to your athletic career?
I'm sorry?
What'd your dad mean to your athletic career?
My father, everything. My father was a baseball player, and he trained me from a very young. He was throwing curveballs to me when I was 6 years old, and he wanted me to be a baseball player. He had to go to war, Second World War, and got shot on Iwo Jima, and that effectively ended his baseball career. So he wanted me to be a baseball player, and but he also would rent the gym in the winter. He didn't know anything about basketball, but he'd rent the gym to, you know, to get kids off the street probably more than anything else, and we would play basketball. And so I played on an organized team when I was 5 years old. And the only reason I was on it was because my dad was a coach. I think I scored 2 points the whole year. But he gave, you know, when you talk about kids, the best thing you can do for a kid, to me, is give them time. And my father always gave myself and the other kids in our neighborhood time. Gave us opportunity. And so I think anything that transpired for me athletically, I trace back to him.
I assume you are wearing your Hall of Fame ring?
That is it. Yeah.
What does that mean to you now that you've got it, and the idea of going in for so many different things? I mean,
Well, it's you know, I certainly was a pretty good player, but my career outside of the court is what got me into that. And, you know, over the course of time, I was an assistant coach, a head coach, player personnel director, a GM, a president of 3 different teams, worked for the NBA for 15 years in operations. So that part of it is, you know, is why I'm in the Hall of Fame. And, you know, it's like today is a benchmark, you know, for me and my family. The Hall of Fame was the same.
Do you ever have a press conference where the question doesn't come up that you're the person that drafted Michael Jordan for the Chicago Bulls?
Well, thank goodness. You know, I think that's probably what I'm known more for than anything else. And if you're going to be known for something, that's not a bad thing to be known by. About a month before the draft, Stu Inman, who was the GM of Portland at the time, that I was very friendly with, and I called him and I said, have you guys decided who you're going to take yet? And he said that if Bowie passed the